Hello, you are watching Bible. Alright, so today I'm responding. This one's called My Questions for Theists. I think it's a guy named the1janitor. And it was kind of hard for me to kind of read and understand his question, but I'm going to give it a shot. I think basically he was saying that how can you believe in God if, you know, everything that you understand in science and reason doesn't apply to him. Now, I think that when someone asks this question, and this is kind of me talking to atheists, it just really kind of sounds stupid and offensive. And the reason is because, you know, those of us who really believe, and there are people who don't totally believe, I can understand that, and they halfway believe, or, you know, 75% believe, or whatever. But those of us who really believe the whole deal, we believe it. So, you know, we think that it all works together fine. We don't see a problem scientifically, or philosophically, or historically, or comically, or whatever you want to say. You know, I mean, we believe it. All right. Now, I guess, you know, that would kind of answer the question in short. But, you know, I noticed that this fellow particularly, I think he was honestly asking the question. And so, you know, because, I mean, honestly, like, when I hear the question, it does seem dishonest. It seems like they're just, like, mocking. But he really is trying not to mock me, or mock anyone he's trying to ask the question to. Let me read this passage to you. This is in 1 Corinthians chapter 2. Let's start at verse 2. For I determined not to know anything among you save Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. And my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Howbeit we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor of the princes of this world that come to naught, but we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of this world knew. For had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But as it is written, eye have not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. But God hath revealed them unto us by his Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God. For what man knoweth the things of a man, save the Spirit of man, which is in him? For what man knoweth the things of man, save the Spirit of man, which is in him? Even so, the things of God knoweth no man, but the Spirit of God. And this kind of delves into a subject that we call mystery. You know, in Darwin's Origin of Species, he talked about, you know, through his theory, which he didn't call evolution in that book, but through his understanding of natural selection, perhaps he could know the mystery of mysteries. Science, if it's true science, really, it's downright intellectually immoral for science to speculate on mystery. And that's the reason why I get offended by the idea of pushing evolution in schools and not pushing other worldviews, because evolution is that piercing into mysteries of mysteries, and the mysterious area is called religion. Okay? Religion is all about mystery, and when we look into science, you have your science, you have your physics, and then you have the edges of those physics with logic, and then you have this area called metaphysics. And metaphysics builds on the mystery problem. Once you build on the mystery, it's no longer cut and dry physical science. It is religion. But basically, I think that trying to kind of understand where you're coming from when you say that, I think that you have to understand that there's religious sectors that you go into when we say the word science that should not be called science. In logic, they call this the inductive fallacy, where you can only know what you know and not add into areas that you do not know. Or, for instance, right above us is a wooden platform. So I can't speculate what the shapes of the clouds are above that ceiling, because it's not within my sensory perception. So it's not observational. And if it's not observational, it's just not science. But when we kind of go into this area, sometimes I think perhaps maybe one of the issues, and you might confuse dogma with knowledge. Alright? And what I mean by that is that, when you're saying, how can God exist despite science or what we know? Well, sometimes what we know, we're not absolutely sure that we really know it. For instance, I was watching one of the atheist vloggers named Ventiloid. And Ventiloid, he kind of made one point real quick about, this is just so simple, it's like the earth, it revolves around the sun. He's like, yeah, you see, the earth revolves around the sun. Now, this is one of those areas, okay? Now, I want to speak on this issue because I know that those people listening to me, when they say the earth revolves around the sun, they think, well, no, duh. You're mindless if you don't, okay? So, I'm going to say that this is an area of dogma. In other words, you were taught these things when you were a small child. And so since they were reasoned through with you at an age of 8 or 9, it has become so ingrained that you would think, hey, it's obvious they can never be thought of any other way. So when we see like this stick, for instance, alright, and I can imagine let's say if we were just to do some visualization, this part's heavier, so this is like the sun. And this part's like the earth, and then you have the other planets, right? Okay, and so therefore, the sun is the heaviest object, so swinging around, it's obvious that the sun is connected to everything. The sun must be the center, okay? Now, here's something interesting to me. You say it's obvious, and you say it's observational. When you wake up in the morning, do you see the sun rise, or do you see the earth move? When you go to bed at night, does the sun set, or do you rise? Okay? Can you feel that? And the reason I bring that up is because with your senses, okay, observational senses, you are not seeing the earth revolve around the sun. But you are taught that mathematically that's what happens. Now, what we do know is by using the mathematics and trajectories of different, observations from astronomy, we know that all these planets are connected, and we know that the sun is the anchor, okay? So being the anchor, it's the most heaviest part and everything's swinging with it. But here's an obvious problem, okay? Universally, when people talk about the Big Bang Theory, they say there's no center of the universe. Now, if there's no center of the universe, how do we know where we're at with this solar system if it's floating around in a universe that has no such thing as a center? How do we know that this thing is going around like that instead of going up and down? Why is it that the north is up and the south is down? If you were in Antarctica, if I told you to sky. More than that, why do we think that the sun is on this plane right here, and so therefore the North Pole, everything is up, and it's just a flat disk like this? Why do we think it's sideways? I mean, we're in space. There is no objective angle anymore. Why do we think north is up? Well, the reason why we think that north is up, because we look at the earth as our center. And so in our minds, the earth being our center has north as up and south as down. And so everything below the earth is down. And that the earth is stationary. In fact, there have also been physical experiments done to, with light rays and stuff, to test the current of outer space. And this was done in the 1880s. It was called the Michelson-Morley experiment. And they could not find any current of space. So then they say that space had no matter. That's what Einstein and one or two other guys before him, they said, okay, space doesn't have any matter, okay? Because we don't have any flowing current, we don't have a tail to the earth. But then again, comets have a tail. Space is not supposed to have any matter. How is it growing a tail? And then, all of a sudden, we revised the Big Bang Theory a couple times. We revised all these theories, by the way. It's never really the same. It's a changing theory. But, we revised the Big Bang Theory, and all of a sudden it has dark matter. I'm like, what properties does dark matter have, and why wasn't it the same matter that was before? They used to call it ether. See, I'm not necessarily saying that the Earth, has to be the center, okay? But, really, it could be this way. Just as much as it could be this way. Or it could be this way. See, it's floating in space. It's kind of like trying to find the top and the bottom of an amoeba out in the middle of the pond. Alright? Unless you see the very top of the pond or the very bottom of the pond, you're just kind of stuck there, and we don't see the top of the pond. Okay? We've got the edges of what we've seen, and then we can't even verify the edges of what we've seen. But basically, we are kind of floating in some relative type of system. Now, here's another thing. When the atheist goes about his way of understanding, he goes in the opposite direction. He says, logic and all these things, they come from man. So man is the measure of all things. Well, if man is the measure of all things, then wouldn't it just make sense to keep on saying that the earth is in the center of the universe, because you have no center of the universe anyway, and the only way that man has always thought is for the earth to be the center of the universe? You say, well, you can't have the earth being the center and the sun being the center. Well, we have 3 North Poles. We have a geographical North Pole. We've got the magnetic North Pole. And it doesn't matter to me, but, we also do have the Santa's North Pole, the fantasy one. So, basically, there are different categories. Now, the sun anchors the whole universe, and in a way, you can think gravitationally it's the center, but it does not mean that we know these things for sure. And so as we kind of go about that process of knowing what we know, not only do we have things changing all the time, but we've built so much on assumptions, and sometimes we have to go back and revise our assumptions. So while we're trying to figure out all this stuff out, we're stuck in a world of mystery. Well, that's when revelation matters. And God does give us evidence, and He does give us science, and we could talk about that for many hours. But those things are only witnesses to the already authority that God knows the edge of the pond. He knows the edge of the universe. He knows things that we don't know. And so God is smarter than us, and He can have an objective way of truth And so through the Bible, I can have certainty. And are there things that, I may have a different understanding of than Scripture? And yes, it could be that maybe I have a bad interpretation of Scripture to start off with. I can be wrong. But you know what? God can be right. And God can be all-knowing. And that's why He knows and I don't.